Okay, what I'm going to be doing today is going over some different ways to create rubble. There's lots of different ways to create rubble. So I'm going to show you one way, and there's different ways to strew the rubble around your scene. So I'm going to show you some different ways to do things, and so we'll start off this specific one. Now, what I'm starting off with here is an actual little floor of a room, okay? So this is already to scale. So we can go over here and get our measurement tool, and we'll see this is 20 feet by 28 feet. So this is the size of the room that we're going to scatter some debris in here. Now, one of the things I see happens all the time is people initially make their rooms out of a box. I don't do that, but a lot of people do. And then the problem they run into is all their normals are backwards. You can see how this is dark red, and if I go in here and grab the faces and flip them, now the normals are the correct way. So you need to make sure that if you are building things out of a box, by default, all of your normals are facing the outside of the box. So when you get in the room and you try to start rendering, you won't see anything. Now, if you're using Arch and Design material, you'll see things, but you can't get correct reflections because if the normals are backwards, it won't calculate reflections correctly. So be sure that you get your normals facing the correct direction. Okay, so what we're going to do is throw some rubble in here. So first thing we need to do is generate some rubble. So with this ground picked, I'm going to go up here to my ribbon, and I'm going to open this up. And over here where it says polygon modeling, I'm going to pull down to generate topology. Okay, this is going to bring up a little utility that'll generate some topology for me, and I'm going to use it. And there's a lot of different options in here. And I'm going to start off right off the bat by creating a plane, and it's going to create a big plane. And I'm going to divide this. Now it tells you how many subdivisions you want based on how many pieces. I'm just going to leave it at the default. And then I'm going to click this when it's in the first row, third one down, it's called skin. I'm going to click on that, and then it's going to break this, okay? And at that point, I'm finished using this. So this is taking my piece and taking those subdivisions, kind of knock them around a little bit. Now, the problem is this thing's way too big, so we need to scale it down. So I'm just going to scale this down. And I don't have to get it exactly right as far as the size of the rubble because we can size that later, but I at least want to get it somewhere where I'm down here in the room, and so that looks fine. Now, since I did scale this, its transformations are not aligned, which is the object's coordinates are aligned with the world coordinates. So I'm going to go over here to my utilities, and I'm going to go reset XForm, reset selected, and then I'm going to right click and convert it to an editable poly, and now its object coordinates and world coordinates are the same. I'll just pull this up a little bit so we can kind of see it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off our realistic and a shaded viewport. We don't really need to see that. Now, one of the things I want to do is to break this into individual little shards that I'm going to use as this is the debris throughout the room. Now, what I can do is come in here and select by element, and I can select each one of these. You'll see right now these are not elements because it's all one thing. But if I go to faces, I can pick these individually, and then I can go in here and start detaching these. That's really kind of pain. So what we want to do is to use a utility to do that with. Okay. So what I'm going to do is to download a script to actually do that task for me. So I don't know how many of you are aware of a place called ScriptSpot. ScriptSpot is kind of like a candy store for 3D Max users. Has all kinds of scripts for different kinds of items that you might want to be able to manipulate with, whether it's modeling or character animation, all different kinds of things over here. So it's like a little candy store. It's great. There's a lot of cool scripts over here. The one we're going to use is one called element to object. So I went in here, did a search. So you can go up here, type in element to object up here, do a search, and then it'll give you hits. And the one we want is this one down here called elements to objects. So I click on that, and it's just little small utilities. Some of these scripts have a lot of properties. This doesn't have very much, which is fine. And then here's the actual script. So you just right click, save link as, and then save it and put it in your folder, okay, which I've already done. Okay, then we need to install it. So to install it, all I have to do is to grab it and just drag it out here and drop it in my viewport, and it installed it. Now, a lot of times when you're using a script, you can't really tell that this was installed or not. Now, a lot of times the scripts, whoever's writing them will have a little pop-up that'll come up and tell you that it's installed correctly or such, but sometimes they don't. And some scripts that when you drop them in here, they'll pop up, ready to use. So this installed this script, and so I need to be able to access it. So what I'm going to do is go up here to my Customize button and go down to Customize my user interface. And this allows me to customize and make custom keyboard shortcuts, or toolbars, or menus. There's a lot of ways you can do this. I'm going to put it in my quad menu. So I'm going to come running here to my quad menu, and it's installed in this area here, and it's called Elements to Objects. So I'm just going to click in here, and I'm going to type in EL, and that'll take me down to the L's, and you can see it right there, Elements to Objects. So I'm just going to drag this over, and I'm going to put it right above the state sets. Okay, so I'm just going to drag it in here, drop it. And then I'm going to grab a little separator in there, separate that out. Now, that's in this top quadrant, so if I right-click, you'll see it's right there is where I put it. Now, I use a lot of scripts, so a lot of times what I'll do is actually make a folder to put all these in, but right now we're just going to use this one, so go ahead and do that. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I need to do before we're going to run that. One of the things I need to do in here is to come in here and break these apart. So I'm going to come in here, my Edit Poly, I'm going to go to Edges, and I'm going to select all the edges, and then I'm going to go down here and hit Split. Okay, what that'll do is divide each one of these pieces into little bitty elements. Okay. Then the next thing I want to do is give it some dimension. So I'm going to come in here and put a shell modifier on it and decide a certain, thickness I want. And so now these are set to go. So I just go ahead and convert that to an editable poly. And now you'll see these are all separate little elements. Now I could go in here one by one and detach these, but it's going to be a really pain to do that. So what I'm going to do is run this script. Okay, so we're going to go run the script, and we're going to name it here. We'll call this debris underscore slabs, and click detach. And it'll take a few minutes as this runs according to how many pieces you have, and then you'll see all of a sudden all these pop up over here. Okay. So now all of these pieces are individual. They've already been detached. And the other thing that's nice thing that the script does is it puts their rotation in the center. So their pivot point is in the center of the object. Whereas if I'd come in here and detach these one by one, it would have used the center pivot. So I'd have had to detach them all one by one and then update all the pivots. So it's a nice little script to do that for me. Okay, then the next thing I want to do is, once I've got all these done, is just pick all of these, and I'm going to deselect my ground plane there, and I'm going to group these together. Okay, so we're going to group these, and we'll just call this slabs right now. Okay, and just going to slide those off to the side right now. Okay, so now I have all these objects, but I want to be able to distribute them onto this surface. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to use a particle system to do this. So we're going to go up here to create. From standard primitives, we're going to go down here to particle systems, and then we're going to use a PF source. Right here where it says particle view, we'll want to open this. And this is our little, it's kind of like the material editor a little bit, the slate editor, because when I pick on an object, right over here, it's going to tell you, what all these little pieces are. They're down here. These are different kinds of modifiers and different collision, just different things that we want to do. But over here at the beginning are different kinds of flows, okay? And these are pre-made particle systems for you. And we just want to get a standard one and just drag it out here, okay? And so we've got a pre-made particle system. Then when I click in the viewport, you'll see the little icon comes up. Now, by default, if I just come in here and drag my time slider, you'll see that these particles, it's got a bunch of particles that are animating through here, okay? By default, it animates them, okay? And so we're going to set some parameters up in here. Now, up here at the top, I'm going to, where it says PF source at the top, I'm going to right-click and rename this. And we're just going to call this our slabs. Okay, so we'll know this is a particle system for our slabs. And then when I click on it, I have a set of attributes that pop up here on the right. Okay. One of the things is the size of this icon. For right now, let's go ahead and just size it down. So it's something about the size of our room. To a certain degree, it doesn't really matter because we're not going to be really using it. And so, but for right now, we're just going to, so we can kind of stay in our viewport. So that looks pretty good. Then we're going to click right here. Every one of these little tabs in here has a different set of attributes that are in here. Now, right off the bat, the viewport, this quantity multiplier tells you what percentage is going to render, what percent is going to be in the viewport. Now, one of the things is in particle systems, a lot of the times, it's a lot of particles, and so we don't want to see all of them. But in our case, we want to see all of our actual slabs that we're going to drop in here. So let's change this to 100%. So what we see in the viewport is what's going to render, okay? Now, if you go down here where it says Render 01 Geometry and click on that, then there's some settings in here. And it's telling you, what you're actually going to be rendering. Now, the main thing in here is when we do a particle system, it normally makes them as one mesh, and I want these particles to be individual. That way I can manipulate them individually. So we're going to click here, Mesh Per Particle, which means that when it creates our slabs, every one of them will be an individual piece instead of them being all one piece, all merged together. Okay, so we go down here to our event, and this is where all our controls are. Now, you've got birth in here. Birth is the amount of particles that it's going to generate. Position is where it's going to put the particles. Speed is how fast the particles are moving. Rotation is the particles rotate. The shape is what is the shape of the particles. And the display is what it's going to show in my viewport. Okay. So let's go in here to birth first. Okay, now you'll see that it says 0 to 30, and if I drag my time slider down here, you'll see the particles, coming out. Okay, now what's happening with that is by default it animates. Okay, now it's got a speed in here. Now if I click on the icon, I can turn it off. Okay, so now I've taken the speed off of this, and so they are growing, but they're not moving because they don't have any speed to them. Okay. You can also just go in here and actually take that and delete it is another thing you can do. Okay. And then if I needed another one in, I could come down here and find the speed and right here, and I could drag it back in here and see how it's a blue line or red line. Red line means it's overwriting, which we don't want to do in this case. Blue means it's inserting. So there's our speed back in there. We're not going to really need any speed, so we're just going to go ahead and take it out. But I just did want to show you how you can kind of put those things in here. Okay, so we've got these particles that are going to be growing on our object. Now, on our birth settings here, you see how it's mid start and mid stop? That means it's animated. If I put 0 on both of these, then it means it's no longer animating. The particles are just going to be generating at the first frame. And so there we go. So there we've got, you can kind of think of those. There's where going to be our little slabs that we're putting in here. This is the amount of slabs in here. So if I go 2,000, that's the amount of them. Okay. Now we'll kick them up for later, but let's just go for 200 right now to not kind of bog our viewport down very much. Okay, where this says position icon, that is the what it's growing them on. By default, it's this emitter that it's growing the particles on, but we want them to grow the particles actually on our ground plane. So what we're going to do here is we're going to replace that position icon, and we're going to come down here and get one that says position object. Okay, now we're going to drag that up, and this time we're going to drop it right on top of that one so it turns red, and it will replace it. Now when I click on this, it's not, you'll see the particles disappeared because I'm telling it not to put them on this gizmo now. I want to put them on an object, and I've got a list here, and I can put them on multiple objects. I'm just going to click add here, and I'm going to click my ground plane, and now you'll see the particles are going on my ground plane. Okay. So I'm going to go back up here to my slabs, and I'm just going to tell it logo and icon and turn those off so we can't see them in our viewport. They don't render, but just to get some, visual garbage out of there. Okay, so we've got position objects, and now it's actually growing those on the objects. Now, down here where this says display, this is what it's displaying, and those are called ticks. If I come in here right here, we're going to tell it to display geometry, and now it's displaying boxes is what it's doing. Okay, so if I zoom back, it's kind of hard to tell here, but it's displaying big boxes, okay? And so if we go down here to our shape, Okay, so I click on shape. These are the size of the boxes, so we need to pull these back down because we don't need great big boxes in there. Okay, so the shape is what the shape that we're showing and the size of them. Okay, so we've changed the position object to the floor, and now we've got random 3D on here. See how these boxes are all tumbling? Now, if I turn this off, I'm going to click this rotation button off, and I have to kind of refresh my viewport. You'll see they're no longer rotating. The boxes are staying in line. Now, in our particular case, I do want them rotated, but I don't want them random. I want them to only be random horizontally. So they're spinning horizontally, but not tumbling vertically because these are slabs, and I want the slabs to be sitting down flat. Now, if they were rocks, I might want them to tumble the other way. Okay, so this says shape cube. So it's putting cubes on here. I want to change that because I want it to be our little slabs. So we're going to go in here and get another shape called shape instance, and I'm going to drag that in and replace that one. Okay. Now you'll see it reverted back to ticks, and the only reason is because it doesn't have any geometry to display in there because we're telling it we want a specific piece of geometry. So now I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to get this group. Now, make sure you remember we grouped this together. So what's going to initially happen is it's going to throw these out here as groups. Okay, it's going to be a bunch of groups of these. Okay, the secret button is right here, group members. When I click on this, then it's going to treat all the slabs in there as individual objects instead of a group, and then it's going to throw those out there. Okay. So it's randomly picking those slabs and throwing them out here so they're random shapes. The other thing I can do in here is I have a scale setting. Okay, this is on my shape instance. I have a scale setting so I can make these down smaller, and I have a variation so I can randomly scale the sizes of those. Okay, that's why I wasn't too concerned earlier about the scale of those, because I can scale them and then I can create them random. Okay. So it's a great way to be able to throw these out here. Okay, so now we can go back to our birth and let's type in 2000, and you see we get lots of pieces out here. So this is a real quick way to be able to take our objects and scatter them across here. Okay, now we want to have a little bit more control of what's going on with this. So what we want to do is to be able to control where the pieces are going to be laying. Okay, so to do that, on our position object, we have an area in here which says density by material. And if I do density by material, then I can tell it to put these on here by the actual actual shader that's on the surface. So let's go make us a shader in here. So we're going to come in here, and for this, I can tell you this only works with a standard shader. Okay, it doesn't work with Arch and Design, but that's okay. Standard shader is fine for what we're doing. So I'm going to put this on here, and I'm just going to name this, and I'm going to call this my slab underscore scatter. So this is my slab scatter shader. Scatter. Okay, and that's on our object. If I come in here and change the color, you'll see it updating. Okay, so that's on there. Now, the way this works is I'm going to put a black and white map on this. So for right now, let's just do something like, we'll just do a checkerboard, make it easy to kind of see this. So we'll come in here and just get a checker, and then I'm going to double click so we can see this in our viewport. Okay, so what's going to happen is it's only going to put the particles where I want them to be. In this case, what it does is black is transparent, white's opaque, so it's going to put them on the white slabs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to come in here on my position object, and right here we're saying location. I go down here, density by material, and when I do that, and sometimes you'll need to update it by rotating your viewport, then you'll see it will only put those slabs in the white area. Okay, well, this is great for us because then we can come back and actually create a bitmap to actually control where the particles are going to be thrown onto our particular ground plane. Okay, so that's an easy way to initially generate some rubble and then to be able to scatter the rubble across your scene by using a particle system, okay? And then later I can come in here under my create geometry and go to compound objects, and I can get a mesher. And a mesher allows me to convert the particles to an actual piece of mesh, and I'll show you how to do that in our next video.